Hello everyone, Soldier Fortune here. Uh, and this time let's load back into our German game that is attempting to explain and show, a little show and tell, of the mechanics of HOI4, completely explain all of them for a beginner, and also show you a sort of the way to streamline them. Now, I've looked back at some of the previous recordings and I've noticed a bug, which is apparently a capture bug or something from the program that I'm using. So, and I'm wondering whether or not this is because of the length of the files, because I've been doing these long these long sessions of gameplay. So I'm going to try and hold my session to a shorter time and see if this bug will appear again. Hopefully it doesn't, because otherwise I'm gonna have to look into how to change my recording settings. Okay, so the Spanish Civil War just started. I'm going to pause. And what does this mean for us? Well, this means we can probably send some volunteers. And this is why I wanted to pump out so many divisions, because you'll have the limit on your divisions is based on a combination between your overall number of divisions. So the limit on divisions that you can send as volunteers is a combination between your overall number of divisions and the amount of territory that the country is occupying. However, it seems that for Spain, your number is capped at 7 on the way up. So we have right now 6. We have right now an army of 6, and we have another one in training, which is why I was training them, but I don't know if they'll be able to join in time. I don't want to send an infantry unit along with them, so I'm just going to send 6 divisions, and that's that. So I'll pick this army to send as volunteers. This is one of the reasons why I did not want to assign a commander, because and I will show you. I will actually show you why before I send them. I will assign the wrong commanders, because I want to actually double check this. So I will assign Hauser, and over to the army group I will assign Kluge. Now, we're not going to use these commanders, which is why I'm doing this. So what my theory is that happens is that when these armies are in transit, here we go, they will unassign these commanders from the armies, and when they reach their destination, they will automatically be reassigned. But since the transit time is 14 days and the reassignment penalty is 15 days, we should see them grayed out as soon as the armies arrive in Spain. Also, we will send air volunteers. We are allowed to send up to 214 of our planes to join the war as volunteers. So I've done that. I'm going to let 1 hour tick so that they accept our volunteers. We have inadvertently increased the world tension. I'm going to pause, and now I intend to send some of my air fleet. So we are allowed to send 200 and something. What we are going to do is we are going to send an air wing of 100 fighters, and the way air volunteers work is you can just select your air wing, and send them to the send them to the Spanish airbase. Also, I'm going to split my close air support into four wings, and I will send them as well. Are these guys going there? Yeah, okay, so that is 180. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to split off another 20 of these bombers, and send them as well to Aragon, and I will just give this one to go to 300. Okay, this way I'll have some bombers in reserve, some tactical bombers which we are not producing, if you remember. I'm not going to send my newer airplanes right now because now there's one thing I don't remember. Am I producing close air support? Yes, I am, and we have 46 in reserve. So technically I shouldn't be sending the bombers, but I could be sending another wing of CAS. Okay, let's do that. Where it would be this one, right? I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to merge them again. Oops. I'm going to merge them again, and I'm just going to let them go up to, let's say, 400 or something. I don't remember what their place was. And I am going to create another wing of close air support of 20. You control click this button to move 10, and this way I have moved 20. Unfortunately, they'll be recruits, but we can't afford to wait anymore, so we'll just let them earn their colors in battle. I'm going to go up to speed 4 for a while. Until my air wing is deployed, and then I'm going to send these guys to Spain as well. Here they are, they've already arrived. I'm going to send them to Spain as well. And for the guys that are already in Spain, I will assign them to the air region, like so, and I will give them the missions of air superiority, close air support, and interception. We're not going to be able to do close air support for the Spanish troops, but we are going to be able to do close air support for our own troops when they get there. So these guys are just going to fly around for a while right now, not actually doing anything. The way coverage is calculated is in the distance between the actual airbase and the center of the air region, and also whether or not your location is allowing you complete coverage of the air region. As you can see, there are some spots here that are outside of our coverage. However, the shorter this arrow, the more central you are to the air region. That means the more likely you have chances to cover the entire air region from the airbase. However, this particular airbase is still under Republican control, so we're not going to move there until we take at least the airbase, if not Madrid as well. So we're just going to speed forward, and you can see the air experience is already being accumulated. We have fuel for 2.1 years. Hopefully the war is going to last somewhat less than that. We have arrived in Spain, and I just want to check. As you can see, the this guy is still en route for another 2 days. So the penalty of him being unassigned and reassigned does apply here. Now, let me explain to you at this point how I think before we start, it would be a good time to, and also you can notice that a different theater was automatically created to where I am no longer cluttered with these armies that are back home. I have these armies that are back home. I'm not going to use them in this theater, so the game automatically creates a new theater, a separate theater for the volunteers. You can absolutely set reinforcement priority to high for based on the theater, which means that the reinforcement logistics will first check if they need to supply something to this theater first, to the armies that are under this theater. I'm going to recreate my army group because I want to assign a field marshal, and this time we're going to assign the proper field marshal, the one that we were looking for all along, which is Manstein. And I'm going to reassign. I'm going to assign Rommel, and the reason why I didn't assign him first is because Rommel has this awful trait of war hero, which means that he gets a plus 50% army reassignment duration, which means that while this guy, while Hauser was unavailable for 3 more days after our army had arrived, Rommel would have had another 7 days on top of that. We would have had to wait with him for another 7 days on top of that. Then that's why I did not want to assign my general. Now on the way back, there's nothing we can do about it, but at least when he's going back, let's hope he won't have to intervene in the fight right from the beginning. Right, so I was going to talk about supply. And pause the game again. This is something that we've sort of skirted around a little bit. If you see here in the division designer, it tells you that this division is using 1.44 supply. And this motorized division is using 1.19 supply. What exactly is so supply is, let's say you can imagine it's the amount of consumables, let's say, that the army is using. Now this is a very so you can imagine here we're talking about ammunition, not fuel, but let's say uniforms, other tactical gear, helmets or whatever, stuff that's being consumed basically on a daily basis by your army. The way, and this is sort of compounded into this abstract concept called supply. Each division has a certain amount of supply that it needs to function properly, and for as the larger the division, the more supply heavy it is. Basically, everything here, every company here has a certain supply. If you see the tanks, a light tank company is increasing supply use by 20.2. I'm sorry, by 0.2. A motorized company is increasing supply by 0.11. A recon company is also increasing supply by 0.02. So everything adds up, and this is how much supply a unit consumes per day. This is a daily consumption, so every day they're evaluating whether or not they are in supply. Also, I don't know why this looks like this, but I don't like it, so we're going to change the way our units are represented on the map. So what is supply and how does it travel? For this we press F4 or the supply map mode, and we can see by hovering over, we can see that the map itself is divided into supply regions, and we can see how supply travels thanks to that arrow. Now, if you are very smart and quick to notice something, you will notice that the arrow always starts from your capital. Your capital, if you hover over here, you see that is supporting 107.92 points of supply. This is your capital supply region, and as you can see, it's actually, I'm going to press F1, it's actually formed up by 3 regions, which are Mecklenburg, Brandenburg, and well, actually it's 4 regions, Vorpommern and Hinterpommern. And is Ostmark in it as well? I don't remember. Yes, Ostmark is in it as well, and actually we can see it from here too. So how do I know this is the same supply region? Well, you can see the borders right here, but also if I am if I'm hovering over this area, it's telling me the arrow doesn't appear. As soon as I hover into a different supply area, the arrow appears telling me how supply travels to this region. Now, when sending volunteers, and our volunteers are right now here in the port of Oviedo, you can see, if I'm going to zoom out a little, you can see how supply reaches our guys. First, locally, you can see that the supply is coming from this port of here in La Coruña. This port is level 6. Keep this in mind. I told you we are going to discuss what the levels of naval bases are influencing. So our supply is coming from La Coruña for this area, and if we were to move even further, our supply would still be coming from that area. You can see the arrow coming from that port, and if we zoom out while hovering over one of these regions, you will see that there is a supply arrow in our home territory that is moving from our capital, and it seems to be pointing to this port right here, which is Weser Ems, which happens to be a level 8 port. Now, if we are going to look at all the ports that we have in our nation, we're going to see that Weser Ems is level 8. Here Kiel is level 8. Here Rostock is level 6. Here Köslin is level 1. And here Königsberg is level 5. However, supply reaches Königsberg also through a port, and you can see here that the supply that we send to Königsberg goes from Brandenburg into Rostock, and then through this supply chain. And if we look at Rostock, we see that it's only a level 6 port. We need to understand that whenever we are sending supply, the AI is routing this supply through the highest necessary port. So over here, the maximum supply that this area can withstand is 30, and you can see if we hover over, you can see that it can support 30 supply. Right now we're only using 4.10 of this supply. 2.11 is used by our army, 1.92 is used by our navy, and nothing is used by our air force because we do not have the air force sitting here. So this 30 is actually calculated as follows. The local supply base, which is Königsberg, the local supply base gives 12%. That is, whatever is considered here local, we get 12 supply from that. In Allenstein, there is a one. Where is Allenstein? Here we go. Allenstein has 3 victory points, and victory points give out some supply, so that is 1 supply for this Allenstein town. Königsberg is 10 victory points, it gives 2 supplies. I think that everything that's under 10 gives out 1 supply, everything that's over 10 and including 10 gives 10 supply, and stuff that would be more important, like let's say this one for instance is Rostock, would be worth 5 victory points. As you can see, it gives out 1 supply. Berlin is a victory point, it gives out 6 supply. Berlin is worth 50 points. Let me see about Hamburg. Hamburg is worth 20 points, and if you're looking at it, it gives out 3 supplies. So it's likely that, and Kiel gives out 2 supply, and it is worth 10 victory points itself. So basically, under 10 victory points, you get 1 point of supply. Over 10 victory points, but under 20 you get 2. From 20 you get 3. Possibly from 30 you get 4. From 40 you get 5. And from 50 onwards you get 6 points of supply. Now, coming back to this. So the rest of the supply that is incoming is 15. Why is it 15? Because this naval base here is level 5, and it only allows 15 incoming supply. So a naval base in a supply region will give you 3 times the amount of supply of the level of the naval base. You could theoretically send more supply from a naval 6 naval base, right? As you can see, it says the supply throughput limit is 18, so you could send 18 points of supply from Rostock, but you can only receive 15 points of supply here in Königsberg, here in Königsberg. So that is why our supply chain manager, let's say, is connecting these 2 ports, and for instance it's not using Hinterpommern, because Hinterpommern can only supply 12, can only send 12 points of supply, or over here in so Stettin, I said Hinterpommern, but that's the state. Stettin can only send 12 points of supply. Here Köslin can only send 3 points of supply, as it is level 1, and Schleswig-Holstein, this naval base in Kiel, can send 24 points of supply, but since over here we can only receive 15 at a time, it would be wrong to dedicate sending supply through Kiel. Now we said that over here we are sending 24 supply from Weser Ems, and we are receiving here in Galicia, in La Coruña, since it is a level 6 naval base, we are receiving actually we are receiving all of it, as though it were a level 8 naval base. Now this doesn't work. This is probably a workaround for volunteers, just so you don't get caught up by the fact that the country you are sending your volunteers to doesn't have enough high-level ports to receive your supply. But for sure, as we have seen, whenever you need to send supply to your own territory, the supply is always capped at the lowest of the 2 naval bases. So over here, even though we're sending 24 out of a level 8 naval base and we're receiving it through a level 6 naval base, you can see it here, we're still receiving all of our supply. So it's, as you can see here, it says 24, and you also get some local supply. So the local supply base 12, this seems to be standard, and you get some more supply from some victory points that are in here. Now Uh, why is this important? This is important because if you send volunteers to a nation and this nation loses all of its ports, you can no longer resupply your men. And this means your men will start to lose their fighting strength and their fighting capabilities. Well, now, why is supply important? Well, supply is important because if you are out of supply, that means you're not receiving reinforcements and you're not and when I say reinforcements, I am talking about equipment that can get damaged during combat and manpower, which is even more important. Now, secondly, any action that you do in battle when you are out of supply will result in you getting a massive penalty to all of your stats. That means your divisions will perform less adequately. So you are going to see your tanks, in case we're talking about your supply, or the enemy's tanks, or the enemy's troops, in case we're talking about his supply, gets cut off. And this is they will receive the same amount of penalties that every army that is out of supply would receive. And this is something that is important to understand. Let's take a look at Republican Spain, for instance. If you see these pockets, right, here we have a pocket. Here it looks like a pocket, but it's not really a pocket because there is a port. Supply can flow into these two troops. And if we hover over, we see here they have 16 supply from the supported region. If we see here, they have 12 supply from the local supply base. Here they have 16, which means that there is free supply incoming into this area. So on top of that, here, however, we have an area that is completely cut off. So it's just one tile wide, and this is important. Whenever you get some troops completely surrounded, as they are in this area, they no longer receive any sort of supply. As you can see, the local supply is also removed from this place. Now, the capital of Spain is at this point, the capital of Republican Spain is at this point Madrid. This means that supply for them flows out of Madrid and into this entire area. Okay, that's good to know. But in order for supply to get to Bilbao or to Barcelona, it needs to go out of Spain, up and around the ocean and back in here. This exposes your supply route to naval raiding. We're going to discuss that once the war starts properly. But over here, you can see, so technically this is a much smaller route to raid from Valencia to Barcelona. So over here, all of these troops don't have a problem. You can see the local naval base is limiting the incoming supply from 12. Local supply base is giving 13 points. Barcelona is giving an extra 2 points, and Gerona, which is this town here, is giving another 1 point of supply. It's not necessary to trouble yourself with all of this. Will I have enough supply? Will I not have enough supply? Generally, if you send, as a rule of thumb, if you send too many troops to an area, you will run over the supply. Here in volunteers, it doesn't matter because we are not all using the same supply. We are only using our supply. Technically, that's how it looks from what I'm seeing here. But let's say you're in a faction, then everyone is using the same supply that is available in the area. So if you and your allies tend to overcrowd a certain area, you will require more supply than the area is willing to give you, and you will start to get some notifications that you have attrition, and the area itself will turn yellow or red. The solution is to find a way to get more supply into the area, either by upgrading all the ports that send all the ports that send. Oh, I know why we're getting all of our supply. It's because we are actually using both naval bases. So we're using this level. So this counts as a level 8. So even though the highest naval base is 6, we are receiving 24 points of supply because what's the word here? I am missing a word. I am very heavily missing a word. Collectively, yeah, no wonder I was hating that word. Collectively, this supply is being delivered through both of them. So collectively, the level of the naval bases is 8 in this area, and that's why we finally solved the mystery. You will manage to get all of your supply in. Okay, and that's also probably why we're getting the supply through this area, because it's the least amount of travel, rather than getting it from here, let's say, which is even further, and it's only it's a naval base of only level 5. Okay, enough talking about supply. Like I said, you will get a warning, and then the solution is either to increase the infrastructure, or if you do not have control of increasing either the naval bases or the infrastructure to get more supply into the area, because maybe your ally is holding those areas, then the only other solution that is left available to you is to pull back some of the troops to a different supply zone in order to reduce the supply consumption for the problematic area. Okay, now let's talk about front lines and planning orders. So let's say we want to make a push and capture both Madrid and this air base, because it's important to us. We are going to establish a front line here. Now, the way I like to do my front lines, especially when I'm playing with a motorized army, is actually I didn't explain what I did. So if we click here and then just click here, the front line will extend. The game will create a front line for the entire border between the two countries of the place where I clicked. Now you saw that's not what happened to me. So how did I do it? You right click and hold and drag around for a front line that would cover the areas where you are interested in covering with your front line. It doesn't make any sense to build your front line larger than the amount of units. So it doesn't make any sense for these green tiles to cover more tiles than the amount of units you have, because the AI will try to throw your units around behind this front line in order that it is fully covered. So for instance, we see we have 6 units here. We have covered 4. I'm going to leave it at 4, but just for the purpose of explaining it. If I extend it here, we have 5. If I extend it to one more, we have 6. It tells me there's no problem, I can cover that, But if I extend it one more, all of a sudden the area that I'm trying to cover is turning yellow, telling me, look man, you're trying to cover more of an area that's larger than the actual maximum amount of units that you can, so maybe you need to re-examine what you're trying to do here. Now, if I am going to stretch it out to, let's say, double the amount, I think it is, so this is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 is telling me you're exaggerating. But if I go to 13, which is twice over the amount of maximum units that I have available, then it's turning red. It's telling me I can in no way, shape, or form hold this front line that you're trying to assign me to. So I'm going to go back down to 4 tiles, and I have a reason for that. Why? Because whenever I set up a mobile army, I double click in order to have all of them selected. I want to unassign my motorized divisions because I do not want them to do the pushing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second front area and just have these 2 motorized divisions float in here behind the second front line. You're going to find it important because these lines are just, they don't tell me, well, if you hover over, they're going to tell me what type of units are assigned to them. But if you want to do it fast, the way I do it is I usually build up, so you have 24 units in an army. The way I do it is I usually build it up with 13 tanks and 11 motorized in order to see which is which quicker. Now over here we only have 4 tanks and 2 motorized available, but it is what it is. So in order to select the units that are assigned to a front line, you control right click and they are all selected. And now I'm going to tell them I want to push this area here. It's confident that it can do it. Everything was green when I was drawing in order to draw the attack order, you all do the same thing. You right click and then draw the amount. So also if you hover over the attack order, well, this one's too small to see. So that having been said, I'm going to let the game run for a while. It's a good thing I look up here. It tells me my MIFO bills are due, which means I will extend them for another period. So now I'm going to let the game act on speed 3. As you can see, my army is moving to its assigned destinations. Now, one of them is deploying in strategic redeploying, while the other 5 units are just driving there. You want all of your units to use strategic redeployment, which is why to do that, to force that, you hold down Control and press B. And the cat is starting the show yet again. Okay. This means that the units are not taking any attrition. Now, what happens when you do strategic redeployment is the unit organization goes down. If you want to represent this in your mind, it's like you are telling the units to hop on a train and get to their destination as fast as possible. If they are not strategically redeploying and they were just using that arrow, it's basically the idea that the unit is marching to its destination. So it's basically getting there on its own power, which means they stay organized, they can react to a combat much quickly, but everything can get damaged because everything is combat ready, basically. So as you can see, we are already engaged in some combats, and I'm just going to zoom in here. Now we have not, so this is the battle screen. You're not going to look at it very often, but you are going to look at it from time to time. So let's just talk about what these things are. These are the commanders on both sides of the battle. From our side, Rommel is our guy. This tick tells us we have the initiative, which means, as you can see, we get an extra chance to pick a counter tactic versus the other side when picking. So basically, they get to go first, and we get to see what they pick, and we get more rolls of the dice to pick a different tactic here. There's an entire tactics list, which, believe me, I've been playing HOI4 for 3 years. You cannot influence this. It's completely AI controlled. The tactics give certain modifiers to how the units are behaving within the battle, but you have no control over them. It's completely random. The only way you can influence it is if your general is higher level than the opposing general, then he is much more likely to pick a good tactic as opposed to whatever the other general is doing. Also, initiative helps, in the sense that if he can get basically more rolls of the dice if he hasn't picked the correct counter tactic. Here are the actual divisions that are fighting. You have one division of Brigada Internationalist on the Republican side, and one division of Brigada Legionario on the defending side. These are the stats that I was talking about. We have soft attack, which is at 2.9. And the reason why it's at 2.9 is because the soft attack of whatever that division is capable of outputting is 8.7. It's modified to 33.8%. Why? Because it's stacking a minus 25 modifier from experience, a minus 60% modifier from terrain. It's getting a plus 10% from the country and a plus 2.5 from the commander. And that tells me that this guy is a level 1 attacker. And as you can see here, he has a skill 1, which means level 1 attack and level 1 defense. Our guy is skill 4, giving plus 15% attack and plus 15% defense. So this is the attack. This is the hard attack that the division is putting out, which is 0.4, and it's also being affected by the same modifiers. It's just starting out of a different base value. And this is the breakthrough. As if you remember, I was telling you, the defense of the attacker is the breakthrough when they're attacking, and the defense of the defender is the actual defense. So this is their breakthrough, which is 1.3, and again, it's modified by all of these types of modifiers. The division that's defending has a soft attack of 10.8 and base because it starts from a higher base value, 17.7 versus 8.7, yeah, and it's receiving a different type of modifier. That is, it's getting the same minus 25% experience, but the terrain in which the combat is taking place is not representing a negative to our defender. It's getting a commander skill of 0.25, and we're wondering, well, wait a second, shouldn't they get a plus 15? Well, no, because this army is commanded by a different guy, and you can see that is signaled here. Our guy is in charge of the overall battle and picking tactics because he is a higher level general, but the units of the respective nations are under the direct command of their own generals for the purpose of bonuses. The tactic itself that we have picked, the tactics that the other army has picked is responsible for this final bonus of minus 25%. Why is it minus 25%? Because we also have a plus 5% damage from our side and minus 25% from their side. The hard attack follows the exact same rules, and the defense follows the exact same rules. Now, I will stop the recording right here because we are at 44. We're going past 45 minutes, and I will be very curious to check whether or not we have a bug, whether or not we have that visual bug, or if this idea of recording in small batches is going to help it. But before I finish, I'm going to I'm basically going to come back here and discuss this screen in the next episode. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you that there is this very, very good HOI4 YouTuber, in the sense that, well, he's not necessarily a very famous HOI4 YouTuber, but he is an extremely, extremely good HOI4 player who has a series of videos out that deal with all of these numbers, and I would do him a grave injustice if I tried to basically redo his work. So I'm just going to leave a link below to the first episode of his series, and you can take the time and go through it. He discusses in depth all the types of bonuses that apply to this type of encounter. Now, just before I finish, I'm just going to give you another overview. This means that our panzers have reached the area of the battle, but they are still in reserves. They didn't come on the field. The combat width is determined by the proportion of attacking provinces to defending provinces. So basically, this combat is being held from one province. If we zoom in, we're going to see it here. This guy right here, this unit, is attacking into this province. Now it's displaying as though our panzers have joined the combat, but they haven't really. They're just in the reserve. This is just how Paradox chooses to display the combat. If you hover over, so 80 combat width is one province to one province. If the attack is done from any additional province, like for instance here, if I double click, you will see it immediately, and here our boys have already joined the fight. So here the attack is being carried out from two separate provinces, let's say tiles, from two separate tiles into one tile. So one tile to one tile is 80, and then for each additional tile of attack, the combat width grows. Why is this combat width important? Because the amount of divisions that can take part in the combat actively are determined by the sum of each division's combat width and the total available combat width. So right now, our 3 divisions are occupying 40 combat width, while their 3 divisions are occupying 18 combat width out of the 120 available. Where do you see this combat width? I'm going to go into the division designer for a second. I'm going to close the screen for the battle, and right here you have our combat width is 16 for the armor division and 18 for the motorized infantry. Now, if you may have noticed that the combat width is increasing in multiples of 40. So originally it's 80, then it increases by 40, and then maybe another 40, and another 40, and another 40, and so on. So there is technically no upper limit. If one tile is being attacked from all directions, then the amount of combat width that is available to that tile is basically 80 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 40 plus another 240, so that would be 320 available combat width. Why is this important? The more units actually take part in the battle, the more damage gets done, the more units are likely to, the more units that are under attack are likely to break. Now, as I was saying, everything is in multiples of 40, therefore it follows that optimum division sizes are multiples of either 10, 20, or 40. So what we're going to aim for in building up our divisions in the future is we're going to aim for combat widths that are either multiples of 10, 20 more likely, or 40 in the extreme case. You cannot get to 80 even if you want, even if you try. There just aren't enough slots available here that to get you to 80 combat width. I think the maximum combat width that you can achieve, well, technically, let's see, just for the fun of it, artillery takes 3 combat width. It is the widest. Anti-air takes 1, regular infantry takes 2. So artillery takes 3. Now this unit would never work in existence, so we have 15 times 5, that would be 75 combat width. But this type of unit could never sustain combat because, as you can see here, it has 0 organization. We're not going to go there. And if you fill everything up with infantry, you can only go up to 60, and it's not useful. Why is it not useful? Because as long as the battle, and this is important, as long as the battle on one side or the other, it doesn't matter, right? As long as they are not using the entire combat width and reserves are available, there is a chance that the reserves will reinforce the combat width. And this happens irrespective of the size of the reserve. So basically, if we were to somehow cover, let's say, 77 of this combat width, and we had reserves available, there is a chance that our reserves reinforce. As soon as they reinforce, and let's say we were in that particular theoretical case where we only had 3 combat width available, and we would be reinforcing with a division that is 16 combat width, we would go over the combat, over the available combat width. So basically 77 plus 16 would mean 93 in an 80 combat width. So basically you get overcrowding in the combat area, which automatically transfers into a negative penalty. This is why the templates that divide by 20, so basically templates of 10, 20 and 40 combat width are indicated, because there is a chance, right, if all the templates are built in this area. So basically, if all the templates that you are using are made out of 20, right, there is a chance that whenever there is a chance that you end up covering the entire combat width efficiently. That is, you put 4 divisions of 20 combat width into a combat that has a combat width available of 80. Then there is no room left, even if you have reserves. So no one is going to throw another, so the AI isn't going to try to throw another division, because there isn't room for it on the battlefield. And this is very, very important. Okay, as I said, I'm going to save here very quickly. I'm going to say thank you for watching, and I'm going to stop the recording now, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.